Hello, class, and welcome to week 11. We're moving right along, right through the textbook and right through the course. This is topic 2 of 4 that we're going to be looking at right now. Topic 1 for this week was the Paul Baker, or excuse me, the Paul Blake video. Paul Blake, VP of Sales for a media company. And hopefully you just took a look at that, because that leads right into what we're going to be talking about now in the topic of storytelling, which is part of the early part of chapter 11. That wasn't one of the sections that I assigned to you, but I wanted to include some other material about that in any case. You know, before we get started, I wanted to make sure I said that I would give you the message that I hope all of you are doing well and staying healthy in this very difficult time dealing with the coronavirus. I certainly hope you and your families are well and that you will continue to stay well. And I want you to make sure if there are any complications that you run into as we go through the semester, that you will let me know about that. The university has some resources that may be helpful to you. The director of the Morrison School, where this particular course is, that provides this particular course, has mentioned some no interest loan programs that the university has. There's various other sources of information where you can go for help, because I know everybody's life is disrupted a great deal, and some people are very much disrupted lives. So be sure to let me know if I can help you in any way. I probably won't have the actual information, but I will know. I can be able to find out where to refer you. I know some of the contacts in the university, and I can help out in that way. So there's a little slide right there, the sample of a business-to-business buyer persona, and we talked about the persona idea, and I thought I'd mention to you that how I'm making use of that. You know, when we go to the next 7 steps in the selling process, we see that early on in the prospecting and qualifying step, and then in the pre-approach step, that buyer persona is very helpful, because it gives us an image of a person to kind of focus on. It's kind of the typical person that we will be approaching as our customer. And I'm sure we talked a bit about that, and I'm sure you remember that discussion. And how I use that, I have the personas in the form of the class roster that I have on my website. When all of you have registered, your ASU ID picture is posted there. So in a sense, I can look at your pictures almost. It's not quite the same as looking at your smiling faces in class, but I'm looking at the collection of pictures now on the picture roster, and everybody's got a nice smile there. So anyway, I'm using that persona idea, because sitting here in my office and giving you this information, it's a little better. Talking to your pictures is just maybe just a little more real than just sitting here and talking to myself and seeing my own picture down here in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. But anyway, that's the idea of the persona idea works in the sales situation. We want to have an image or a persona of the person who is our typical customer, who we are writing the message for, who are we eventually going to be selling the product to. And of course, in my case, the product here is the materials that I put together. I put them together with you in mind, thinking of a lot of things. For example, thinking of what we need to cover in the course, what we're supposed to cover to make a course about selling and negotiation, and trying to pick out those topics and thinking of making sure those are focused on you. The other part is I know I know a little bit about your backgrounds as far as your academic backgrounds. I know what the kind of courses you've had. You've all had a course in marketing. You've had some other business classes. You've had accounting. You've had economics. So I can go ahead and use terminology from those disciplines, and realizing that you have had courses in those. So that's in the same sense, in the same light of the way a person preparing to make a presentation in a selling situation thinks in that way. Needs to know a little bit about the background of the people that they're going to be talking to. So anyway, staying with the 7 steps of the selling process slide, what we're working our way up to, and today, and all the topics that we're going to be talking about for this week are for step number 4, presentation, the part of the sales call when the salesperson offers a solution for the product. And that's just a few words that explain and go into some detail about what we're going to be talking about today. It looks like when you look at this 7-step process, we're of course right there in the middle, and we're probably, some people would say, well, yeah, that's the most important step when you get to make the presentation. But after you've heard Paul Blake, the Vice President of Sales, in his little video that you just watched, you'd get a different impression. You get the impression that to get ready for step 4 requires a lot of preparation and a lot of work. So when many of us, all of us think about the sales job, we're thinking of presentation. A few minutes ago, I was looking at salesperson images on Google Images to see how they were portrayed there. In practically all cases, it was a situation of a person, selling a product or talking to a group. What they don't show is the steps 1, 2, and 3, which we now know and which you now know, are the hard work of getting ready for the preparation, finding the right prospects and then qualifying those people, and then getting ready with a pre-approach process, and maybe going to the extent of developing a buyer persona, so you can have a picture in your mind of the person who you're going to be contacting in the presentation. And then there's the approach. What kind of how is that going to happen? How are we going to explain to the customer that we've picked out as a target for our presentation? How are we going to explain to them the purpose of why we're coming to see them, and what methods are we going to use to establish rapport? So I think a good place to start when we talk about preparing the presentation, preparing the message that's going to be delivered in the presentation part of the selling process. Storytelling takes a big role there, and we want to spend some time, and I want to spend some time talking about that, to talk about storytelling in marketing and what we mean by that. When you first hear the term storytelling, it sounds like, oh, these aren't made up fictitious stories where we're just passing time telling stories about the good old days to the people we're talking to. There is a little bit of that. We can build rapport by talking about the good old days a little bit with people if we know them, and we've had a history of dealing with them over the years. We can talk about, and we can tell stories a little bit, but we don't want to do too much storytelling. We want to get into the actual presentation itself. But storytelling has an important role, and it's even played a more important role today, I think, in many of the online businesses. And I want to talk a little bit about that, a little bit of that as well. So storytelling selling is our main topic here. That storytelling selling allows you to present your brand, to talk about your product or your service in an interesting way that connects with the customer, or the customer group, or the customer the customer's company that you're selling to. When you put your narrative, your brand narrative, and I'll be using that word more in these videos today and for this week, in that when we talk about the brand, we're talking about the special uniqueness that we have established for our product. And when we're selling our product, we're also selling our brand. And then when you go into the job market yourself, when you're selling yourself to a company, you will, in a sense, be developing your brand, your unique set of characteristics that you will want to present, every time you apply for a job, maybe in any time that you're evaluated, once you're hired, when you're on the job, you'll want to present yourself as your brand. But anyway, we'll talk more about that as we go. But so putting your brand into story form is a great way to encourage people to learn more, ultimately to build relationships so that if they need products, they need solutions for what they do, whether they're a business or whether they're an individual consumer. Storytelling is a way to get that message across to that customer. It's also a great way to convey your mission and goals information in a way that can captivate your audience. And some of the examples I'm going to talk about here in a minute, we'll kind of give you examples of that. When you think like a storyteller, you can better envision problems your customers face, and you can focus your attention on how your product or service involves those problems. As an experienced salesperson, you'll have some stories that you can bring in from your experience working with other customers. You most likely would not want to identify those other people by name. Often there's a reason to keep their names confidential, but you would want to talk about how other people have used your product and their experiences with that. Storytelling is important because every day we're bombarded with all kinds of marketing messages, and I think we start to so many. You will see different numbers of how many. Some people keep track of this, and there's anywhere from a few hundred to several hundred that we're exposed to every day. For example, you're looking at your Facebook page, and you are being introduced to all kinds of products. You're giving their marketing messages being pushed at you through most of the social media. Driving down the street, you are exposed to signage, signs, even in some, depending on the route that you take to get from where you're driving, you'll see billboards that will be giving you messages. And so there are lots of messages that that are pushed to us each day. Storytelling can help because it's more of a complete discussion. It's interesting. They're very interesting, and it's a way to connect with your customers. So incorporating storytelling into your selling can help you engage with customers, and ultimately make them be interested in buying the product that you'll be selling to them. Storytelling is how we connect. Think of it as a way to connect with people. A great presentation it will turn out to be a series of well-told stories. Sometimes they might be touching stories, they might be funny stories. But storytelling is a skill that has to be practiced. And you might be able to find an example right in your own family. Many families have a person who other family members will talk about as the storyteller. When there is a need to learn about something that went on in the family, over time, some years ago, there is often a person who people will go to and say, tell us that story again. We want to know. We want to hear that again. And that's a kind of thing that, and that's a skill. The people that are able to do that, you'll have to admit they sometimes their stories are corny, but you'll have to admit it's not only a skill, but it's also a willingness to share. And if that's that's probably the point that I'd like to make right now, is that be willing, develop that willingness, and it is a skill, and it will be a valuable skill for you to take with you wherever you go. Elements that make up a great story are the personalization is one. People like to envision themselves in stories. We can get involved, and I'm trying to look ahead here on my sheet to see where we're going, because I do have a story coming up here for you. You want to personalize the stories as much as possible. That is, tell the story, your story, not a story of something. Well, a story where you say, well, I heard of this person that did this or that. You want to talk about your story, because people will very much be interested in. They're interested in your story. They're interested in personalization. If you can get to the point of giving your story, then you will be on your way to developing the skills and the ways to have other people tell you their stories, to tell you their stories about their product or service needs, stories about what their companies need, and you'll get more information that will be very helpful to you. So personalizing stories is a way to get empathy and to get people to engage in their narratives. When somebody says, "Tell me your story," I kind of think back to the first day we were in class, where we each kind of told a little bit of our own stories, and by doing that, we probably know each other a little bit better. And some people, sometimes a person will say, if you don't see yourself as a storyteller, somebody says, well, tell me your story. And your answer might be, well, I don't have much to say. I don't have a story. Well, the point is, everybody has a story. And what that means is that the person you're talking to wants to know, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you were born, where you grew up, why you decided to come to ASU, why you decided to major in the subjects that you did, how did you happen to get the part-time job that you have now, where are you going in the future, and why. Having those skills will be important for you, so that if you're in a sales position, you'll want to encourage others to do that. You'll want to hear their stories. It's always helpful, if possible, to support your stories with some specifics, with some data to make it more believable. What would that be? Well, it would be, if you're telling your story about the time your boat capsized while you were fishing, you'd want to give some indication. Well, how far from the bank were you? Or something about the years are very important to stories, because times change, things change over the years. So putting what I would call data would be putting a year on that. Tell them when it was, and that will help to explain. Or how old were you at that time? What else were you doing at the time? Those kinds of facts will be very, very important. Here's a story, and here's some things that, and there are 3 or 4 of them here that we want to take a look at. Remember, a few weeks ago, I talked about a book I was reading about these new ideas, new innovation ideas that really aren't innovations, that are really disruptive businesses. And I talked about the Dollar Shave Club. You might remember that discussion. Another one is Warby Parker, which is, as you see here on your screen now, that Warby Parker, the glasses company, was founded, and this is right off their website. And this is one of the points that I wanted to make. And I'm going to be showing you material off the Warby Parker website, as well as off of a couple other ones for some interesting products. But and that's why I want to emphasize is what they say and how they say it, because this will give you some ideas about how you can build your own stories, the kinds of things you can say when you're storytelling. So in this slide from the Warby Parker website, they're telling a story. They were founded with a rebellious spirit and a lofty objective to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious business. Every idea starts with a problem. And again, this is word for word their words off their website. Ours was simple. Glasses are too expensive. We were students when one of us lost his glasses on a backpacking trip. The cost of replacing them was so high that he spent the first semester of grad school without them, squinting and complaining. And then, nice little reference there, well, we don't recommend this. The rest of us had similar experiences, and we were amazed at how hard it was to find a pair of great frames that didn't leave our wallets bare. Where were the options? What were the options? And so that's, thinking of those words, and I read that. I could have posted this for you to read on your own, but I think the point of stories, they're verbalized, they're told out loud, and it's always good to read your story out loud to see how it sounds, because you want it when you say your story as you explain it, as you say it in your own words. Will communicate differently than just reading it on paper. This sounds like this is kind of writing the way you talk. We were students when one of us lost his glasses on a backpacking trip. They go on to then explain about the product, and so think of yourself here. We're talking about you being a salesperson. We're not saying that you're going to be developing a website, although that might be part of your selling proposition and your selling practice, and that would probably be a pretty good idea. But right now we're talking about the verbal part of it, how you're going to be approaching a customer and what you're going to be saying to them. And this is the kind of story material that you can talk about your product. So again, following on with Warby Parker, it turns out there was a simple explanation. The eyewear industry is dominated by a single company that has been able to keep prices artificially high while reaping huge profits from consumers who have no other options. We started Warby Parker to create an alternative. By circumventing traditional channels, designing classes in-house, and engaging with customers directly, we were able to provide higher quality, better looking prescription eyewear at a fraction of the going price. Now, if you were a Warby Parker salesperson and your job was selling eyeglasses to a vendor of some sort, a store of some sort, not selling them online the way Warby Parker sells them, but you were selling them, this is a kind of information that you would include in your message, in your presentation. This is storytelling information that is really your presentation. So if we went back to our little 7-step slide of what are the steps in the selling process, we get to number 4, the presentation. What is it we're supposed to say in the presentation? One answer is, well, this Warby Parker information is a good example. This is the kind of stuff. So what does it say? Why we started this company, what we do, what's the value of our product, and how did we do it? And so there's one example. So this was the kind of the best information I lift off their page, and I didn't get the graphics, but I just have the key words from the founder. It all started when High Brew founder David Smith and his business partner sold the iced tea company they spent over 10 years building. Every day was a journey. After years of hard work, David and his family took the opportunity to fulfill a lifelong dream on the open seas. During their adventures, David and his wife Elizabeth stayed alert by cold brewing coffee that was bold, smooth, and packed with natural caffeine. So here again is a story. Another way it could have been presented is online. This could have been instead of this line saying that David Smith and his partner sold the iced tea company, it could have been, hello, I'm David Smith, and I used to be in the iced tea business, and when my partner and I sold our business, my wife and I took a journey. After years of hard work, we were able to, sell the business and had to have this great journey at sea. We cold brewed coffee, and what he gets the rest of it is, well, it was an experience that inspired them to craft a premium ready-to-drink coffee brew in a can that's ready whenever and wherever you are. And so that's what David and his wife Elizabeth did. They created this product. I think it's an interesting story. Then we go on to see that high brew coffee is made from 100% direct trade Arabica beans that are cold brewed over time and not heat. So that's interesting too. So again, if you're using storytelling as a way to collect the information and to write your presentation for your step 4, the presentation you're going to make, this is the kind of stuff that you'd want to include. A little bit of history. It's interesting. Some of it is a little bit humorous, perhaps. But maybe the humorous part or the easygoing part is good, and that always helps rapport. But you want to keep the focus on some of the hard data, as we talked about in the story. That, for example, high brew coffee is made from 100% direct trade Arabica beans. That has very significant information if you're in the coffee business. They get it's at first the 100%. When we talk about data, well, there's a good data point, 100%. Direct trade is that they get their beans right from the source. They don't get them from some wholesaler who got them from another wholesaler who got them somewhere else. They get them right from the source. High Brew is dedicated to serving up an elevated coffee experience that helps you meet each day's adventures. Interesting, because they're saying, we have adventures every day. They're not all like going around the world in a boat, but they are nevertheless. We use coffee as part of our daily activities. Every batch is brewed to be smooth, bold, and full of natural energy and way less sugar. The final line, High Brew, is for go-getters, trendsetters, and the doers. So there you go again. A way to kind of to wrap up your message in your presentation. I think I have another. Oh, okay. I have one more slide there. And I think at the time we were talking about the shave company. We were also, I mentioned the fact of that Harry's is another company that has that jumped into this business within the last 10 years or so. And the significance of this is that the Dollar Shave Club and Harry's were both startups at a time when 2 other companies, Gillette was one of them, had about over 90% of the market. So these were bold maneuvers on the part of both these companies, both Harry's and Dollar Shave Club, to jump into a very dominated market, not quite a monopoly, but nevertheless dominated by some deep pockets companies. Gillette in particular is a particularly tough competitor because for the last 10 or so years they've been owned by Procter & Gamble. So they're well funded. They can do most things that they want to do. They have the resources, the funds to do the advertising, the sales promotion, and to pursue new innovations, to come out with better razors and other related products. But anyway, in this one, also from their website, there's a picture. They show Jeff and Andy. These 2 guys, Jeff and Andy, were the founders of this company. And they were, again, here's their story. What's the story? Well, they were tired of overpaying for over-designed razors and of standing around waiting for the person in the drugstore to unlock the cases so they could actually buy them. And that's kind of one of the, and that's a little bit humorous. They talk about that some more on their website. Is if you're familiar with that particular case in a drugstore, it's like many of the items up and down the aisles are self-service. You grab your little basket or your cart and you pick up your items, your shaving creams and toothpaste and other items. But when you come to the shaving section with the razor blades, they're locked up because it's a small package that is very high priced, and for that reason, these guys thought, well, it doesn't have to be that way. They asked around, they learned that a lot of other guys were upset about the situation, so they decided to do something about it and started their company. So when we get to, we talk about storytelling, and again, it's part of your presentation that you're going to be making. Leave a little room in your presentation for some storytelling. It'll probably be at the front end of it. It'll be after your first contact with the person for that day. Your appointment with your customer has started. You'll have a little bit of small talk. How's it going? What have you been doing these days? Have we planning any vacations or something? If you have previous experience with this person, you'll have other topics to talk about. Key thing is in your storytelling is to make a point and be sure that people know what is your point. Is it about we developed this product because we didn't think the existing products were as good as what we could make. We knew a lot of other people who wanted a similar product. I want to tell you about, my point is, I want to tell you that we had a great adventure on the high seas, and during that we learned how to brew cold brew coffee. And when we got back home, we said, in a way, everybody has an adventure, maybe every day. Well, let's look at a day as an adventure, and why don't we'll provide the coffee for your daily adventure. Make a point, make your point clear so that the person knows why it is you told the story. Make your stories relevant to your prospect, tie it right in, and that's almost goes without saying, but you want to make sure the stories are something relevant to your product, to your prospect, not just to you. We all have stories that fit our families, that fit ourselves, that fit lots of other folks that we know, other people that we know. But when this is a case of making your story relevant to your prospect, when we get later on in the second set of slides that will topic 3 for today, I'll have a discussion in there about finding somebody within the company that the prospect works for, that the prospective customer works for, where you might get a little bit more information about the company. And that might be a source of information where you can find out something relevant to your prospect. So anyway, make it relevant to them, not just to you. Find that common ground where you both have something of interest. Again, use data or analytics of some sort to make your stories come alive. If you're telling a story about one of your products, the appropriate data and analytics will be, I sold this to a customer. They were able to do their job they were able to do it in 50% less time. They were able to be, 20% more accurate. Comments like that. They were able to cut an hour off their workday. They were able, whatever it is, use numbers, something there that makes that will catch their attention, because eventually, right after we talk about the story that you're going to tell and the presentation, you're going to be getting into numbers, and it's going to be about dollars. It's going to be about the dollars that customer is going to pay for your product or your service. So why don't we get into the numbers game a little bit early, in a sense of talking about data analytics, and because it will be very specific. In other words, don't keep your story so general. Give it some specifics, some data, some analytics. Be authentic, be real about it. Stories can be simple. Your presentation can be simple. It doesn't have to be. You don't need to take almost unbelievable stories. You don't have to puff up your product. Be authentic about it. And there's some other language that I'll talk about in the third topic for today about being authentic is, if there is a problem, if there is some shortcoming, why don't you be the first one to mention that? It's better than your prospect bringing it up. So if you, there could be problems. Any ways the product is not workable or useful, mention those up front. It'll be better than you'll be on the offense rather than defensively defending whatever that problem is later on. The last point there, be memorable and repeatable. I think that means that, make the story interesting and make it fun to some extent, and make it repeatable in the sense that, maybe so that you might tell that story again, but maybe make it interesting enough that the person you're telling it to might want to repeat it. They might want to say, there was a salesperson in my office today and had this really neat story, and then, have enough they may want to repeat that. So make it memorable, make it repeatable. So anyway, with those 5 tips on storytelling to finish up, that'll end topic 1. And excuse me, that's a typo at the bottom of that slide because I renumbered those. This is actually end of topic 2, and next we'll be going on to topic 3. See you there.